everyone, and welcome back to Passport to Possibility podcast. I'm Noelle, and you're listening to episode 4. Today, let's dive into what it really looks like to build a business while still working a full-time job. Have you ever felt that quiet itch to build something of your own? If so, you're not alone. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. There's power in taking small steps right in the margins of your day. You can begin shaping your next chapter even before you feel completely ready. Let's explore together how to make that happen and what it could look like for you. Years ago, I ran my own business. There's a specific feeling that comes with that. Making decisions, building something yourself, having it truly be yours. By 2024, I realized I missed that. Not just having my name on something, but the act of creating. Deciding things start to finish and living with those choices, good or bad, instead of just following someone else's plan. You know, there's nothing quite like looking at something you've built and knowing every decision was yours. If it worked, great. If not, you learned and adjusted. And I missed that more than I expected. But it wasn't just the creating I missed. I also missed mentoring people. I missed walking alongside someone as they figured things out, not just doing my job well enough to get through the day. And there's a difference between doing good work inside a structure someone else built and building the structure yourself. I hadn't done that second thing in a long time. And I didn't realize how much I'd missed it until I started feeling it again. It wasn't some, big midlife crisis. It was just a quiet realization creeping in over time that something in me had gone kind of quiet, and I wanted it back. At first, I wasn't sure what building my own business again would look like with my current schedule. And to be clear, I didn't open a storefront travel agency or create a company completely from scratch. I started as an independent travel advisor, partnering with established travel industry organizations that provided access to suppliers, booking tools, certifications, and ongoing education. I also found a supportive community that offered mentorship, business training, and the opportunity to help others who wanted to build their own travel businesses. And because of this business model, all of my training was self-paced. I could complete certifications, attend live or recorded trainings, and research destinations like resorts, cruise lines, or travel suppliers whenever I had a free moment. There were no set business hours. I built my new business around my full-time healthcare job, using my lunch breaks, early mornings, evenings, and weekends. Sometimes that meant squeezing in a training during my lunch, reading up on a new resort before work, or brainstorming trip ideas on a quiet weekend. Other days, it was just jotting down client questions or inspiration for future trips. So when I mention training, research, mentorship, or building my business, I'm talking about learning the travel industry, developing as an advisor, and growing the skills to serve clients, all on a schedule that worked for me. It wasn't like going back to school or working a rigid second job. It was truly flexible, and that made it possible to build something new, even with a demanding full-time career. If you're picturing this as a whole separate shift after hours, don't. Most days, it was simply fitting in what I could when I could. Maybe you've done something similar, like using a lunch break to read or learn, getting up early for a quiet hour, or working on the weekends simply because you wanted to, not because you have to. I wasn't feeling overwhelmed, and I remember that clearly. I was excited. People might think building something on the side is exhausting, like you're wringing every bit of energy out just to keep up. Does that sound familiar to you? That wasn't my experience. Nothing was on a deadline that said it had to be done today. If I worked for an hour and needed to stop, I stopped. If I got stuck, I asked questions instead of sitting there frustrated. It took effort, sure, but it didn't feel like it all had to happen right away. Let's pause for a moment here. If you had a chance, think about it. Something you've always wanted to create. Maybe a business, a project, or even a hobby you haven't started yet. What's held you back? What's one thing you might try, even if it's just a tiny step? I didn't know everything before I started. I figured most of it out step by step. I'd research, ask questions, adjust when things didn't work. I wasn't waiting to feel ready. I just kept moving. Here's a little trick that helped me. I kept a small notebook just for ideas and questions. Whenever something popped into my head, even if I only had just a few minutes, I'd jot it down. That way, when I had more time, I could dive deeper without losing momentum. Maybe that's something you can try too. None of it would have felt as steady without mentorship. I wasn't just handed a stack of videos and left to figure it out. There was real training, real people to ask, and when I hit a wall, I wasn't stuck there for days guessing. Mentorship mattered to me for another reason, too. I've always liked teaching, helping someone, figure out their next step, encouraging people. Helping others build more room in their lives mattered to me just as much as building my own thing. Let me share a quick story. One day, a friend I was mentoring reached out, feeling totally stuck on her first client project. We hopped on a quick call, talked it through, and by the end, she not only had a plan, but felt excited instead of overwhelmed. Watching someone else break through a barrier, sometimes that's even more rewarding than solving your own. One thing that took a while to trust, I was learning from people with real experiences, following their training and paths. But I realized I couldn't build this exactly the way someone else had. Some things that worked beautifully for others didn't fit me. My personality, how I talk to people, what I wanted this to feel like. So I kept what served me, let go of what didn't. And slowly a direction showed up that actually felt like mine, not something I borrowed. Not every business gives you that kind of flexibility, I know. What worked for me won't map perfectly onto every situation. This wasn't some story where nothing was sacrificed. It was smaller than I expected and slower, to be honest. Sometimes people ask me what I had to give up to make this work. The truth is, I did have to make some trade-offs. There were weekends when I chose to work on my business instead of going out. There were evenings when I watched, a webinar instead of another episode of whatever I was binging at the time. But what's interesting is it didn't feel like deprivation to me. It felt like investing in something I cared about. When you have a clear sense of purpose or excitement, those choices feel a whole lot less like sacrifices and more like stepping stones. If you're thinking about taking on something new, it's worth asking yourself, what are you willing to set aside, even temporarily, to build towards the future you want? Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's comfort, sometimes it's just old routines. And honestly, there were times when I wondered if I was moving too slowly. I'd seen people, posting huge wins online, making big announcements, and I'd wonder if I should be doing more, be faster. But But I had to remind myself that my life, my schedule, and my values were different, and not to compare my story to their story. My progress wasn't always flashy or fast, but it was steady, and that was enough. I'd seen a lot of restructuring happen in my career. I already knew staying somewhere a long time doesn't guarantee safety. Starting this gave me options, but it gave me something else too. Direction, purpose, skills I'd started building piece by piece. So when my healthcare chapter ended, I already spent months building something meaningful to me. I wasn't starting from zero. That made all the difference when things changed. I remember the day I found out about the restructuring at work, and instead of panicking, I felt a sense of calm. I had something of my own growing in the background, something I'd already poured love and effort into. I had real skills, real relationships, and a sense of direction. That made the transition so much less scary and a lot more empowering to me. If you're listening and you've ever felt anxious about job security or just wondered what you would do if life threw you a curveball, having something you're building for yourself, even quietly, is an incredible source of confidence. It doesn't have to be a side business. Maybe it's a creative project, a skill, or a community you're nurturing. The important thing is that it belongs to you. At the time, it just felt like little things I fit into my day. But looking back, I can see those small things were quietly building my next chapter long before I realized it. And if you're in the middle of that process right now, taking tiny steps, sometimes wondering if they matter, I want to tell you they do. I didn't always see the big picture at the time. Some days it felt like I was checking boxes or learning things that might not be relevant. But each of those little actions added up to real momentum. If you can, pause and give yourself credit for any progress you've made, no matter how small it seems. Sometimes I wish I could go back and reassure myself during those uncertain early days. This is working even if you can't see it yet. If you need to hear that today, consider this your sign to keep going. I keep coming back to that. I didn't wait for one chapter to end before I started the next. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I just started before I felt completely ready. So if you're listening and wondering where to start, remember, you can begin in the small pockets of your day. You don't have to have all the answers up front. Finding support and mentorship makes all the difference. You get to shape your own path, even if it looks different from someone else's. If any of this resonated, I'd love to hear about your own journey or what you're working on, even if it's just an idea. Reach out or share your story. I'm always here to cheer you on. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Until next time, take care, and remember, sometimes the plan starts smaller than you think. If you'd enjoy this episode, I'd love it if you'd share it with a friend or post it on social media and tag me. Just search for Mini Travel Adventures, the number 4 S. That's MINI Travel Adventures, the number 4 US, so I can thank you and hear which episodes you're enjoying.